Intertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Oh boy, here we are. It's another Tuesday, folks. Thank you for tuning in, and we have a great part 2 for you today with Mr. Randy Layton. How are you, Randy?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Thanks for agreeing to come back.
Yeah, no problem. I love to hear gated drums. It's always great.
Yeah.
Boy, I miss those sounds.
Before we get started today,
thank you for having me back. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we get started today, I'd like to say thank you to the people at Pitbull Audio and the people at Studio Instrument Rentals, major sponsors of the Intertalk Radio Network, and we are so glad to have them as sponsors, and we appreciate all they do for us here at Intertalk Radio. Today is a beautiful Tuesday here in Nashville. We had a great Mother's Day weekend. I got to do a gig out at Arrington Vineyards Sunday. It was a beautiful day out there, a lot of families and stuff. And I hope you all had a great Mother's Day and loved on your moms or loved on their memories. And yeah, but here we are back today. And last week we were talking with Randy. Well, for those of you who don't know, Randy is the man behind Alternative Records. He's spent a lot of time in the arts, and his faith kind of influences his work quite a bit. I mean, he's, from that center. And he was very instrumental in helping to get a certain band called the 77s a certain amount of notoriety, and we all appreciated that. And we were talking in the last segment last Tuesday where that relationship with Exit Records, the label that the 77s, Robert Vaughn, Steve Scott, and other artists were on, how that relationship came to an end, how that label, that whole music endeavor there came to an end. And Randy, I'd like for you to just kind of tell people where were you in that mix there, when all that went down.
Well, real quickly, as we discussed, Exit was a label that was formed with the idea initially of making really good music that would appeal not only to Christians, but practically anyone that had got the chance to listen to it. They very quickly moved their vision towards getting distribution deals with large labels, such as A&M and Island. For a number of reasons, both of those relationships ended badly, mostly because they were what we defined as P&D deals or distribution deals and publishing, or printing. I mean, they were, Island and A&M was assigned the task of, with the pleasure of printing up copies of your records and making them available to radio and that sort of thing, but they weren't really contracted to have much more responsibility than that. So between that wall and also the continued issue of being perceived as just being Christian bands and that's all they're ever going to be, which is one of the guys at Island that told me, it became clear that wasn't going to succeed in the way that Exit had envisioned. And so that island deal ended, and everybody at that point started having showcases and trying to get their own deal. And I remember very well a night at the Roxy with Peacock, Vaughn, and the Sevens. And, the idea was various labels were invited. I remember sitting in the VIP section watching the whole thing. And, but nothing came of those kind of events. And there were a number of those. I spent, during that time frame, I was working with Exit in terms of helping to get their music out to radio, also put on shows by bands like the Sevens. I got them airplay on major AOR stations and things like that in the areas, that I lived in, and made that very successful. But that experience could not be translated nationally because of these issues with the various labels. So in short, that's kind of what we kind of finished on. The label, folded operations. Then the bands like the Sevens kind of imploded from external and internal forces. And so they were not really a functioning unit for a while. I spent time trying to shop not only the demos that the Sevens were cutting post the Island record, but I also was shopping Steve Scott's Rice project around to different people. And one of the big stories I'll tell is that I knew the A&R guy at Rhino, and Rhino had an artist label for new music called RNA, and I thought, why not? So I sent a package. I sent Steve's tape and a bag of rice, minute rice, along with it was perfect, along with the very, creative, press materials and that sort of thing. Sent them, gave him a couple of weeks, then I gave him a call. Or actually, he called me, and he said, I love what you did. He said, that was the second most creative packet that I ever got from any artist or band. He said, the music doesn't quite work for us, but it certainly was memorable. He said, unfortunately, the number one person was a band who sent in a woman naked through the door with a demo tape, and that kind of stood out as being the number one way that he got a demo that stuck out. As alternative didn't generally send out naked women to chase down deals. I
was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if the guy offered you a job after that presentation.
No, but I did some things with Rhino, prior to that. So I just had that relationship. But right after that period, it was presented to me. It's like, well, now that nothing's going on, do you want to put out the music that you're trying to shop? In other words, do you want to put out the Steve Scott material? There were two album projects. There was Rice, which was the 6-song EP thing that Island was supposed to put out, and there was the previous album called not Love in the Western World. Thank you. That was on word. Lost Horizon was going to be the album that was going to come out on A&M when that didn't happen. And so I said, sure. I was already transitioning my company to becoming a label. It made perfect sense to put out this music, especially if they were just going to hand me the masters, which is what they did. So it also became inexpensive to do out of the gate, which was nice. Mike did go in and remix some songs from Love in the Western World for the project, but basically most of the album was the bulk of the two albums that didn't come out. And it was pretty successful. I mean, out of the gate, we sold way more units, or however you want to call it, of that piece than they had ever sold with this first album through word channels. So, based on that, because I think they only sold 2,000 of the first album. So it told me that you really can do this independently. And keep in mind that this is, boys and girls, that this is back before things like the internet was out there, and it was a little tougher to get the word out. But Exit, one of the things that Exit had done very well was send out a lot of, they got a lot of people signed up on mailing lists. Through doing shows and newsletters and what have you, and I had access to that. So that helped a lot to reach out to people right away. And even before the record was out, I could talk about it, get people to buy it in advance, so that the advance orders were going to pay for the project, which it wound up doing very well. Also, we had tremendous support from people like John Thompson at True Tunes in Chicago, Mike Delaney, who was a buyer for an entity called Spring Arbor, which controlled most of the distribution channels for CBA stores, and those guys also did pre-orders. So back in that day, that's how we were able to kind of get out of the gate and get the record in the stores and get it heard. And I got it played on radio on both AOR, and I even got a minor AC hit for him, which I always laugh at, because of a song called "Heaven Hears a Heart That Breaks," and a guy named Brad Woolsey had a lot to do with that. Bruce Brown was another guy that was very helpful. So it was really nice coming together of various entities to sort of make that possible. Then it just kind of went on from there. The Sevens were split up. Mike was kind of down and out and depressed, didn't know what to do next. So I offered to pay for some demos. Those demos became the core of More Than Miserable Than You'll Ever Be, which was the next record. And that did very well as well. So, and very quickly, I had people like Charlie Peacock and Michael Knott and Vector kind of asking me about the model and how to get it done. So other artists began to discover that they could also do this independently in a way that they hadn't thought of before. And all those guys had success doing it that way.
What other people besides Charlie, and were you working with some bands down in Southern Cal?
So, right. So, moving. Well, in this time frame, I mean, Michael Knott approached me and other artists, and they just wanted to know how did I pull it off? What distribution channels were there? What ways of marketing were there? Those are things I was able to help with. I mean, Knott wanted to sign with the company. I actually turned him down, which I'm sure he was thankful for later. But because he did pretty well on his own. But it was very nice to be part of that. That before I did that, there wasn't a lot of that going on. But once people realized that they could kind of stop chasing the big time, big deal and actually make a living at it, that became a way of doing things. And this is way before YouTube and anything else. So, I later started working with other acts, Robert Vaughn, a band called 2 Pound Planet, which was out of Northern Carolina. And they had their album produced by Mitch Easter, who produced the first 2 REM albums, as well as a bunch of other people. And we got that album on the college charts and did very well with that. Got great press.
How did you get these producers to work with you?
Well, I paid them. No.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah, but
I mean, there was that. The Planet thing that dropped in my lap because one of the guys in the group was actually a Sevens fan. He had contacted me about getting copies of, I think, Miz. I noticed that he was from North Carolina. I was a big Mitch fan, and I just kind of mentioned in my note back to him, "Oh, you're from Mitch Easter country," and he goes, "Oh, well, I'm from this band, and we just had a demo produced by Mitch," and that started that conversation. And eventually, I picked them up and put it out. We remixed, we added some new material, By that time, I was starting to already point towards trying to get back into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay.
Thinking maybe I learned a couple lessons from the exit experience, and as we will see, that perhaps didn't happen.
Yeah.
But,
so what do you attribute your entrepreneurial spirit to? I mean, did you ever sell newspapers as a kid or deliver milk or anything?
No.
Like that?
My parents wouldn't have allowed that. Riding the bike or throwing the paper. But from a very early age, because I grew up in a musical family, I had the interest in various facets of the music business, whether that was radio,
mm-hmm.
retail, or playing. But also, from an early age, I just thought, if you're not going to do it, or if he's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. I don't know why I was born with that mindset, but it was always like, as far back as we talked about in the first hour, as far back as 1979, I was already thinking about reaching out on a worldwide basis to find a way to connect Christian artists from different countries, and also the fans of those acts, and get them to kind of meet each other. And I had really only been a Christian for several months prior to that, so it was very early in my journey as a Christian that idea came to me. But within 2 weeks of being a Christian, I was already putting on shows with the people that I was around. So it was just always there. Mm-hmm. And I still have that mindset today. It's just, if I see an opening and no one else is doing it, and I think it needs to get done, or I think God's telling me to do it, or, those kind of things, then I take a stab at it and move forward.
Cool, man. That's great. I admire that about you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you got to do it. Yeah.
You have to have a vision. The scripture puts it in a larger context. If people don't have a vision, they will perish. I don't know that I would have perished per se if I hadn't done alternatives, but it
wait, we're gonna have to take a break real fast. Pitbull Audio, Studio Instrument Rentals. Sorry about that abrupt interruption. We'll be back, folks, right after this.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Hey, we're back. We're here with my guest, Mr. Randy Layton, and we're just talking about his entrepreneurial spirit and his motivation for starting alternative records and just getting involved in the Christian music scene and promoting shows and contacting record labels. And I mean, you got to have a special calling for that sort of stuff. And I was asking him what he thought his inspiration was for that. And it goes back to his dad being a musician and his exposure to that stuff as a little kid and his interest in it. And Randy, you told us last week that at 3 years old, you had a record collection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, it was everything from Little Queenie by Chuck Berry to, Red Sails in the Sunset by Lou Christie or Ricky Nelson stuff. I mean, plus a lot of obscure things that nobody ever heard because they were records given to me that had dropped off either had gotten no airplay on local radio or it had, but it dropped off the chart. So it was a real mixture of stuff. And because my dad would play jazz and country around the house, my mom was playing more, pop-oriented stuff. And then my oldest sister was into everything that was, hip and current, in terms of rock and roll. All the stuff was just in there, as well as gospel stuff, So it was just, it was a special education that I was very fortunate to get at a really early age. I think the only nut I didn't crack really was classical, and I did that in high school. So by the time I was out of high school, I mean, there wasn't practically a genre that I wasn't, collecting or into. So
tell me, what year were you 3 years old?
That would have been 1963.
1963, I was 13.
Yep.
And when you had your record collection, I don't know if we ever had, we had a record player, yes. My dad bought this little record player, that's got the top and the speakers built in. And I think we got that when I was about 8 or 9. And our first record was a Ray Charles record. And
which one?
I can't remember the name of it, but it had Georgia on My Mind, Unchain My Heart, Hit the Road Jack was on there. Yes, that was that was a family favorite.
I know the cover. It's kind of like the Yellowish cover, and it's got all these songs on it. But yeah.
So, so it had to be around. When did the Beatles appear on Ed Sullivan? 63, was it?
64.
64. Okay. So we got our first record player somewhere around that time because my first 45s were I Want to Hold Your Hand, Aretha Franklin, and James Brown. And then the first album I got for myself was Big Swing Face by Buddy Rich.
Ooh.
And I can hum every one of those songs to you right now in sequence.
Well, as a little kid, of course,
it's pretty amazing how Yeah, I saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan, so I was sucked into that, and it was great back in those days of innocence. It was pretty amazing. So, tell me, what was the final project you did for Alternative Records, or has that time ever come?
Never say never. No, I think I have said never. I think that's occurred. let me quickly say that once I had worked with some of these acts, I was really interested in working these acts in the mainstream. So I really thought that they were deserving. Two Pound Planet were just an incredible band. There was no reason why they couldn't have been, huge indie stars at least. And Robert Vaughn certainly had the capability by the time I started working with them to become a major act. The Sevens, I thought, still had that ability. So I wanted to take alternative to where we had, major label distribution, so I could get it into, actual stores, besides what, the kind of people on the Christian side were already doing for me. And I had offers initially from a distribution company called Precision. They did labels like American Gramophone and things like that. They were really interested in the acts that I had, and so we signed a deal. The day that I take out a billboard ad announcing this new deal, the head calls me up and says that his head decided that they weren't making enough money, and so they immediately jettisoned all the new signings, including myself, that they had just taken on. So I had to eat all this new product that I just, pressed up for that distribution deal. It was really nice. Then there was another opportunity with a label that was being funded by B&G or RCA in Seattle. They were especially taken with Robert, but also with the Sevens and 2 Pound Planet. They offered me my own office, my own, at a nice salary. And I would also do A&R for them. Plus, they would do distribution for all the alternative acts. Perfect. And as I'm making plans to leave EG and make that move to Seattle after being wined and dined a couple of different times, and we're all kind of in agreement on the vision, one of the participants disappeared with a bunch of money that belonged to B&G and this project. And that killed that deal. And I had to go back and say, honey, we're not going to Seattle. And
wow.
And so, and then after that was when Sony and Capitol, a couple other labels, started chasing Robert Vaughn. I had just pressed up his album Songs from the River House, which was my really first explicit, I'm not doing music for Christian labels right now. I don't consider myself a Christian label per se. I consider myself a record company that has some Christians on it, but I will continue to serve both sides. But I really felt like this was the time to start taking a couple of these guys into the regular marketplace and seeing how they would do. So there was a bit of a bidding between the two labels. Sony won out. Sony then wanted to cut me out completely out of the picture. I had to finally win a concession of getting points on the subsequent album that they would do. So in turn, I gave up the masters. I gave up all this stuff. And in the end, the album doesn't come out, which we don't have time for that whole story. But didn't come out.
Wow,
Robert got dropped. I don't get my money back. I don't get my masters back.
Wow.
And that's when I decided that, besides the bit of a financial hit I certainly took, it was also just, I now have had a taste of the big league, which was, because I certainly was. I was certainly, in a legal sense, battling with Sony and with Windswept Publishing, which was a huge publisher at the time, and their lawyers were taller and bigger than mine. So, I just decided that's it. I'm just going to go back, and I still had 2 or 3 records, unscheduled to roll out, which I did. And then after that, I just decided that I felt my time was up. but I was encouraged by what other people had gone on to do independently, and that included some of my former acts, and and that was good. I kind of just dropped out of being connected to CCM altogether for quite some time, but what was interesting was to watch what happened eventually, which was by the mid-'90s, we started having bands like Jars of Clay with their song Flood, DC Talk, Switchfoot, POD. These acts started crossing over to, or starting having hits on Billboard charts, and they were getting picked up by major labels. This wasn't happening back when I was doing it, but some doors have started to be opened, and mainly, the door that opened was those majors saw that money could be made at this, and they invested a lot of money, in that business. I mean, you had companies like EMI and Sony and, Zomba, buy out or have a controlling interest in companies like Word and Benson and Reunion and those kind of things. And so that changed a lot of things. Plus, we now had the internet, and we had various other ways to connect to people and get the word out that had not really existed back when I was doing it. I mean, now in the 70s, ABC tried word distribution, NCA in the 80s tried Sparrow, and CBS had Priority. None of those deals broke anyone on the charts. It wasn't until really the 90s where that started to happening. That started happening on a regular basis. Amy Grant had a couple of hits much earlier in the 80s, but she was, probably the pioneer with that. But nothing really happened after that for a few years until these other bands came along. So, I don't know how good that was for the CCM thing in general, except that I think it opened doors more for a Christian act to be able to sign directly to a major if they show that they have the talent and they have the music and they have the following, those kind of things. But in the times that we're in now, we also find ourselves with a very dwindling amount of majors and indies that are out there to get signed by. So the independent route it's become a very normal way now for that artist to be heard. And that's certainly the case for what I call the legacy acts, which is always old people like the Sabbaths and Daniel Amos and those kind of guys to still connect to their fan base by virtue of the internet or by doing Kickstarters or what have you. So there's been a lot of changes since Alternative was trying to do its thing. And a lot of those are positive, and some of those are negative, I think.
Well, that things are so different in CCM as they are in the music industry as a whole. Some of those record companies, most of those record companies you named, like Word, Sparrow, Benson, I don't even think they exist anymore. They have been swallowed up.
They were bought out. And then some of those companies that bought them out, also like Zomba, which was this huge thing that did a lot of the buying out of Benson and Reunion, also went under. So I don't even know who controls that catalog anymore. It's just I've lost track. Back in my day, we had six majors.
Grandpa, what happened back in your day?
Remember those days? You had RCA, A&M, Arista, Warner Brothers, Elektra, those kind of things, Capitol. And now there's like 2 or 3, majors that I can think of, Universal and EMI. It's totally changed. I mean, everybody got folded into each other but, those companies that are left are still signing new acts and they're still in the business. one can still break into the business with a major label and kind of reap the benefits of that relationship in terms of recording budgets and tour budgets and that sort of thing. But on the other hand, there's also dwindling opportunities for the artists compared to the old days to get paid for their work via airplay and things like that.
Right. Yeah, you got to hit the road, Jack. Getting back to Ray Charles.
So you got to
hit the road, Jack, and you got to sell merch.
Yeah.
And do Facebook, Twitter, Facebook Live, all those things.
Well, one of the things you'd asked. Oh, I'm sorry. One of the things you'd asked me, and maybe we'll have to get into this into the next segment, was how can artists these days get noticed? I mean, what are the young people today doing? How do they get started in this business? And I have some ideas on that. I have a pretty good idea of.
Well, I want you to save that. I want you to save that for the next segment.
Save them.
Okay. I just remember here was a little premonition I had when back in the 80s and 70s and stuff. I remember going into a Tower Records in Sacramento, the original one, standing at the door and seeing all those records and going, oh my goodness, look at the competition. Most of these people I haven't even heard of. I came here for one record that I know of, but look at all this stuff. It's pretty incredible. And it's still like that now, but in a different way, a different format. And I'm just
there's not too many records you can walk into.
Yeah, you can.
But yeah,
used record stores, yes.
Used record stores. But, it was always a very small percentage of people that got signed. Got the record out.
Here comes that music, man. Here comes that music. We'll be right back, and we're going to get a lot of tips and pointers from Randy how to deal with the music business today.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on InterTalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on InterTalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on InterTalkRadio.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
And we're back, folks. Before we get started with our last segment here, I'd like to say thank you again to the people at Pitbull Audio and the great fellas over at Studio Instrument Rentals for supporting the Intertalk Radio Network. My guest is Randy Layton, and just before that last segment ended, we had planned to use this segment so that Randy could share with us his expertise and how he would use that in today's music industry, marketing, business world, and what he sees as a possibility for young entrepreneurs who want to break into the music, maybe not as musicians, but maybe as managers, that kind of thing. So, Randy, lay it on us, man.
Well, that's a alleged expertise, but I'll do my best then. So, really, at the very core, it just goes back to what it always went back to. I mean, from the 50s or before rock and roll, right? You always needed to have talent. You needed to have a clear vision for what you wanted to do. And you needed to find a way to catch someone's ear, preferably at a record company or maybe feature manager or those kind of things. But those are always the basics, you know. And I remember getting so many demos in the mail during the alt days, and most of them, really weren't very good. And I remember writing a very unique rejection letter out for people that basically said, nicely, that what I've heard doesn't quite fit what we're, looking for. But I do want to give out a bit of advice. And I can't remember what all I said anymore because it's been a long time. But what I did say in general was, make sure that you, from the Christian point of view, make sure that you're called to do this. That this is what God wants you to do. Because I don't care whether you're a janitor or computer programmer, musician, radio show host, whatever it is. Make sure that you think this is where God wants you at this point in time, and that you have the talent as well. Because if God wants you to do it, then you will have the talent, or you will develop the talent. So it really does start there. I mean, it sounds really stupid and basic, but that's really where it gets back to. Then what you have to do is to channel that vision into whatever is available to you now at the point in time that you're living in. Back in my day, that was looking stamps and sending out mailers. Fortunately, we're not in the dark ages now. So the people out there have a lot more available to them in terms of reaching out to the public that they want to reach out to or label. So you want to make sure that your vision is distinctive, that you're not copying somebody else, because there's plenty of those. Play live as much as possible. Just do it. Get out there. I don't care if it's street corners, crappy bar, whatever it is, but develop your act and your sound. And because touring is going to become a big part of how you pull in income, because it ain't going to be from royalties for one. So that's going to be a big part of it. Labels will see that you've grown this terrific or organic, audience that's into what you're doing. So many acts, are signed off of the big following that they've created by being on the road and getting people engaged in various ways in what they're doing. So, of course, these days it also includes social media, social interaction sites. So that's Twitter, that's Facebook, that's Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat, what have you. You can gain a lot more fans this way, and you can communicate with your support in these different methods. If you have a strong social following, as you know, that looks very good to labels as well, because they also have a ready-made channel for them to reach out as well on their part. You might find that label employees might even be part of your fan base. It can happen. So once your music starts getting shared, and at this point, you're not worrying too much about getting paid. If it's getting shared on YouTube, and if it's getting shared on streaming sites and those kind of things, it's getting the word out. It's getting people to notice what you're doing. Later, if those things are successful and somebody picks you up, then the ability to get paid for your work will come. But you have to build that base. So one of the things that, I always say is be prepared to be starving for a while. It's also why I say that it might be good to make sure you have some sort of financial backing, not huge, but something that, you can fall back on, or even, part-time job to fall back on, as you develop your music. And that way, it's not as difficult as it was maybe for me when I first started. I didn't have a lot of money, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle for the first couple of records, because any money I made went right back into making the next one. It took a couple to start creating a nest, to start doing other projects without worrying about feeding my own family. So, and my father played in the business for 50 years and never made a very comfortable living, because you go through dry spells and what have you. So anyway, there's that. And
so tell me, let me ask you something. Do you have a website or something that people could get in contact with you if they wanted to seek you out for your knowledge of these sort of things and ask you questions and get advice?
I do not have a current website, which sounds funny and sad at the same time, but because I'm not an active label at this point, I didn't see the point. But I'm on Facebook. I have, 4,000 plus followers. There's a lot of people on there because of my background in all the things that we're talking about the last couple of hours.
And I hope they're listening to this show right now. All 4,000
Well,
of
it'd be
them.
nice. It'd be nice if some of them were. But I'm very, very accessible. I've had the same email address for 100 years and the same address, and I do still hear from people. It's interesting now, because my youngest son is in a band here, and he has his own little studio, and he took all my equipment, and so now he has it all, and he's learning a lot of these things that we're talking about. And it's a tough gig,
Yeah.
He's
What's the name of his band?
The band's called the Ego Tones, and they are as if the Ventures came from Mars and turned up here. They're kind of like that. So it's like surf music from another planet. It's
so
cool.
He's got a little bit of his granddad in him, huh?
Yeah, he's got and a little bit of me as well, in terms of being nutty enough to think he can do all this. But he plays. He's much more talented than I was. He can play anything: keyboards, guitar. I gave him an accordion once. He handed it back 2 weeks. Like, hey, look, I can play accordion. I mean, I gave him a zither. which you can Google if you need to, and he figured that out. So he's very, very talented in that sense. And they have a new album coming out in fall. So it's his path. Whereas my oldest son is very much involved in business, and he loves music as much as I do. But he thought early on that's the way he wanted to go. Chris is probably going to do this all his life, and hopefully he'll do well. But it's a tough road,
It's tough. It is tough, man.
But
I'm glad I
give him
came up
advice, and
when I did.
He ignores it and moves on. Now, so you've got the things I've already given you. You can also go out and buy a registry of all the A&R people that are out there. You can Google that idea. You can also hire like an independent A&R service. I think Taxi is one of them. There's others, and for a fee, they will put your music into the hands of label execs and so on. So those things are still in place. You're still, for some of us, artist-wise, we're still trying to get the attention of major companies so that they can be our parents and pay for our day-to-day living so we can afford to go out there and do stuff. But there's also a lot of people that are finding they can do it independently of that, and through things like what do we have now? We have Pledge Music and Kickstarter and those kind of things, which are more, I think, for acts that are somewhat established, but it's still a way for them to get your fan base to help you pay for your next record or to pay for catalog reissues or things like that. And those things don't work well for everybody, but they work well for a lot of people, including the people that you and I have worked with. And, there's that. Things like Spotify and Pandora, yes, they don't pay royalties for most people. If you're a Madonna or somebody at this, high echelon, you can demand more money or hold your services back from them until they agree to give you more. At this point, I don't care who plays you. When you're first starting, just getting exposed and then making sure people know about that exposure and how to access that. So that when you send off things to the companies, they have all those links to all those social media sites and the place where they can hear your stuff streamed. I believe now in this day and age, people now pretty much just send online links and MP3 files as opposed to CDs and things like that, because we kind of moved on from them. So to me, I think in a way there's more opportunities than there ever was for the person that really wants to make music. On the other hand, there's a lot more challenges as well. And
there are.
So again, back when you were making a lot of records, you could get paid based on sessions that you did. There would be opportunities for you to get paid long after the record had gone off the charts because it was in a movie or a film or those kind of things. Because you had a deal that worked that way, or you were a union member and that was part of the deal. Those things are as not as much in play now as they used to be. Certainly they are in Nashville where you are. But a lot of the country is not Nashville, and unfortunately, in a way. So a lot of people don't have access to those kind of ways of getting paid. So it is tougher. It is harder, but it is also still possible.
Yeah, I remember living in San Francisco. The way we got the word out is we printed up hundreds of posters and just walked the streets of San Francisco, stapling posters to telephone poles.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were good enough, you got in the paper. But things have changed. And, man, Randy, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And I have learned quite a bit from you behind the scenes, things that you were doing for me and I was totally unaware of. And I appreciate that. And
thank you.
I would just like to wish you the best of success in the future, and hopefully I want you people to get in contact with Randy. He's a man full of knowledge in this sort of thing. So hit him up on Facebook, Randy Layton, Layton. And Randy, I'll call you later. We'll talk.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.